The governance that was put in by Cadbury and so on has been interpreted rather narrowly, I think. That in fact people have followed the codes and they've really not captured the human side of the enterprise. So all the comments now is how do you change it, how do you raise values and how do you get people to act more honourably. But one of the other things is quite shocking in a sense for those like Michael and I who've been involved in education for so long, is actually the quality, the honesty and integrity in society. When we started when doing this work together 20 years ago or something like that, we really worked on enlightened self-interest. Well, actually, and I taught a number of people who were working in the city and are now working in these banks, and one assumed a basic form of integrity. To be honest, I think that integrity is not there to the same extent, and therefore what you need more than anything else is something that goes beyond codes, something that goes into leadership. And I think that, in fact, the other side of it is people have tried to tighten up the relationship between the ownership and the shareholder and the company, if you like. And I think that, in fact, the shareholder hasn't really picked up the essence of what was going on in an organisation. It tended to take it from a sort of outside view and whether the codes are in the right place and this sort of thing, and didn't really recognise some of the leadership issues.
Where Sir Adrian came in the early 1990s was in response to things like the Robert Maxwell affair. And I think Sir Adrian always said that codes can help deal with specific issues that come up, but they can't completely eliminate the possibility of rogue individuals mismanaging companies. And I think that's exactly what we've seen. I mean, I think there are clearly lessons to be learned from the financial crisis, but clearly one can only correct things after one knows the sorts of problems that actually emerge when individuals invent new ways of getting around the existing system.
How can you have traders making large sums of money corrupting the LIBOR system? I mean, it's just absolutely crass. That is the heart of the City of London. You know, somebody should be there, you know, in the top management, just going around and saying, how are our traders making money? And, you know, I think it's just good management leadership practice that you would expect. And so in that sense, yes, you're always going to have rogues, but what you really want is top-class leadership and information flowing up in the in the organisation.
I think with hindsight we can see how in a case like Royal Bank of Scotland there was a combination of something old and something new. So it clearly was the case that the chief executive and the chairman were not sufficiently disciplining one another, and they were also preventing a flow of information towards the other non-executive directors. Now, that is not how the governance process is intended to work following the Cadbury report. But of course, what we've now learnt from the Royal Bank of Scotland is it is possible to frustrate the governance process in a particular new sort of way that we perhaps hadn't envisaged before. So the process of improving governance is all about building on what we've known from before and incorporating some new learning. And clearly the new learning is we need to worry about when the chief executive and the chair don't keep an eye on one another, and when they may deliberately withhold information from other non-executive directors or outside stakeholders. And we've got to work out better ways of preventing that sort of thing happening in the future.
My own experience as a trustee and a non-executive director is that this whole thing about executive, non-executive, which being the independence and dependence type sort of thing, is really mirrored and almost orchestrated by the relationship between the chair and the chief executive. So the chair, on the best boards that I've been on, enables the non-executives to challenge in really effective ways, but then actually manages the balance with the person. If the relationship, if CEOs classically are quite assertive, determined, and so on, and if the chairman has to manage that, but at least as well as encouraging them to take initiative and drive the organisation. So it's absolutely critical. No, I think that, you know, it happened in the past. Probably we didn't have the same emphasis on effective boards in those days, but I think in fact fact today it's absolutely critical. Incidentally, if I can throw in something else, which is, because I've just given you the very orthodox answer, the unorthodox is, I think Higgs was saying, you shouldn't actually promote the chief executive to the chair. Which actually, in fact, happened in the RBS, so to some extent. But really, honestly, I don't, they do know the business. So it's really a question of actually making sure that sort of chemistry and that dynamic works. So I think it's absolutely critical.